Hi, I'm Tim from Marathon Mates. This week we are talking everything about how we fuel to keep our body strong and on the move. We'll provide you with our knowledge and experience around the things we do know and the things we don't know about nutrition. We will talk about what we eat when we're training, as well as what we eat when we're leading up to, during, and post a big race. This is one episode you'll want to carbo load up on. Are you ready to run? Let's
Welcome
go.
to the thrilling world of the Flying RuNR, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Welcome back to the Flying RuNR, our 46th episode. We're getting close to the 1 year anniversary. Anyway, I'm Tim from Team Ellis Running, and I'm joined on the panel on this episode by Tara, my amazing wife, and the other part of Team Ellis Running, and Tony, the actual brains of the podcast, who does much of the posting of all the Flying RuNR updates on social media, as well as a lot of the background legwork. On this episode, we're talking about nutrition. And as we saw from Tara recently in Boston, getting your nutrition right on the big day can be the difference between running really well or missing the cut off altogether and having some serious health concerns. Tonight, we're going to share our tips and our tricks around what we know and don't know about nutrition. But before we talk about nutrition, and as always, I'm going to talk to Tony and Tara about your week and how you're going. And most importantly, Tony, how you're going on your journey to the Gold Coast Marathon, which I think when this episode drops will be about 7 weeks away from there. So, guys, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm just looking at my countdown timer. It's 55 days left today. So, yeah, it's sneaking up on us, isn't it? So, I had a really light week, to be honest. I went for a run with Sharon on Labor Day, our public holiday here in Brisbane, and I tweaked my calf. So a little bit of a strain. I didn't tear it. I'm pretty confident of that, but it was a bit sore. So I just, because of my history with calves, I know that after a couple of days it starts to feel good, and then we get out and run on it again, and yeah, it just becomes a bit of a recurring cycle. So I took a pretty easy week. I ran Wynnum Park Runner on Saturday, and then we ran the Mother's Day 8K. I'd like to say together, but we started together, and it was really frustrating. So I went off and did my own thing. And so I ran 13 Ks more than I thought I would. But it was actually really quite beneficial just having a lighter week anyway. And I'm feeling okay this week. So we'll see how we go. I've got a big week planned. I want to ramp up. We're only 2 weeks away from, when this episode comes out, from the Brisbane half. So got to get ready for that. But yeah, that was my week. What about you guys?
Tim's been down the coast for work, so midweek we've been doing things separately. This week I didn't do any runs. I didn't even get on the treadmill, didn't walk, didn't do anything until we did Labor Day run, which was on the Monday. Did nothing for the rest of the week apart from just some stretching, and then I did park run on Saturday. So for me it was a really long time off having any time running. It was really, really weird. And that was just mainly because I was tired and I just wanted to have a sleep in. So I did park run on Saturday. We did Paradise Point Park Run, which is one down the Gold Coast. So that's the actual turnaround point where the half marathon is in the Gold Coast Marathon. So it's right at the end there. Lovely course, back and forth a couple of times. Yep. It was wet and rainy, so there is a few puddles, but there was dolphins out in the water, and it was a really, really lovely park run. And then Tim and I both did a long run. We're running separately for our long runs as well at the moment. So Tim, because he runs so much faster than me, he ran off and did 25 Ks, was it?
Yeah, I did
Tim?
25, yeah.
25. And I caught Terry Frew, who was one of our marathon mates, on what's known as the Hornybrook Bridge, about halfway around, and he was coming towards me. He turned around and ran with me for the rest of my run, which was really nice of him because he wanted to slow down anyway. So I only did 20. But during the week, I did make a decision to downgrade my race for next weekend. So next weekend, Tim and I are doing it's actually this weekend, sorry. It's what's known as GC30. Tim will still do the 30 Ks, but I've actually downgraded mine down to the 15 Ks. And that's just to preserve my body for the half marathon at Brisbane, which is coming up very soon.
You've come out of Boston and your body's tired. You're just tired, I think, in general after the holiday and getting back into work. And there's probably no need in your training program for what you're trying to do to push it out to 30 Ks. You probably did have a little bit of extra impact on the body, I guess, through Boston and just recovering from it. So it's a smarter decision to back it off a little bit, listen to the body, a bit like what you're doing with your calf, listen to your body. We said last week, the GC30 this weekend for us is only a training run in race conditions. So whether Tara did 30 or 15, it really is irrelevant. It's more about just getting out there and getting some kilometers in the legs, but doing it in a smart way without leading to a long-term injury. So, it's a big year ahead.
I can honestly say that coming out of Boston's probably I haven't come out of a marathon feeling the way I have out of Boston before. So normally I'm ready to get up there and do my half marathons, 30 Ks again straight away. Boston has really taken it out of me just from being so sick on the horse that I just really want to make sure that my body can last for the rest of the year. So I'll do whatever I can to make sure that happens at the moment.
Yeah, you just start nursing. I call it nursing my calf at the moment. So it's just like you, Tara. Just nurse your body through, give it a bit of a breather along the way. But I'll share something that I found quite interesting on the weekend. So down at Wynnum Park Run, it's nice and flat, really lovely course. And a couple of guys from people from work came along as well. So, it was a nice incentive. And my intention was just to go slow and, probably go 35 minutes for the 5K. And so 7-minute Ks. And I was running slow. And the first 2 Ks went by. The first K was 6 minutes 12. The second K was 6 minutes 13 or something. And it just blew me away because I was doing it really, in my mind, really slow and really easy. And then I dialed it back to about 6:40. So I ended up with about just over 32, which going back to the beginning of Parkrun, as you would remember, Tara, that was pretty much the time I ran for my first park run, which at the time was a really good PB for me. And then on Sunday, when I was running with Sharon and then we separated and I started to run by myself, I swear I was going a lot quicker. But then my times were about 7 minutes 30 a kilometre, and I'm going, what's going on here? So all these people that say they run to feel, I just cannot run to feel. So when I'm thinking I'm running slow, I'm actually going relatively quick for me. And then when I think I'm going quick, I'm running relatively slow. So
that is weird. I don't know what that is.
I actually have the same thing as you, so I can understand that. I'm like, I'm just taking it easy at parkrun today, and then I end up with like 28 minutes, and I'm like, hang on, that didn't feel like a 28-minute parkrun because I was taking it easy. And then I'll go run the next day and go, right, I'm going to just run to feel, and I think I'm running like the wind, like as fast as what I did at the park run, I looked down and I'm like, oh, this is not even close to that time. Yeah, I can understand completely.
Yeah.
But you do have to run to feel as well. So don't look at your clock or your watch all the time, because your body just will do what it wants to do.
Yeah, and those calf issues you're talking about, I've had similar things in the past when I've come off training programs with Tara in the past few years and then step it up into Gold Coast training. And I'm very cautious of it this year round, because the last couple of years I've had exactly that, really sore, knotted calves. Yeah, they feel like they're tearing, but they're not. But they're just fatigue that's gone in there. And if you push it too much harder, you will tear it. Yeah. So yeah, back off for a week or so. It's normal. It's just the load on the body and the load on the legs. Yeah. And remember the old training tip that we put out a while ago: distance beats pace. So just focus on distance rather than the time that you're doing it in. Yeah, and do it nice and easy, nice and slow, and just nurse your legs through it, because you've got the speed there. You'll get through it on race day, but you want to be able to get to race day first.
Yeah, and interestingly, calves are in the news at the moment because my GM at work, he was gunning for a time down at Paradise Point the week before, and he was on target, and then all of a sudden, bang, he said it felt like a sniper hit him. And I said, yep, that's a tear. You're off for a while. So, and our good friends over at 40 Runs, the Long Run podcast, Chris Ford, ran the London Marathon. I think 3:44 was his time. And 2 days afterwards, he was reaching up to get something on tippy toes. And this is how dodgy our calves can be. And same thing, sniper, the old sniper shot in the back of the calf, and he's now not running. Yeah, it's taken him down. He's a calf tear. So they are dodgy little things.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Now it's that time of the week where we search the world to bring you the latest and greatest marathon news. Okay, Tony, what's been happening around the world this week?
Well, you alluded to it last week, and we've had Elliot Kipchoge come out and has done an interview with the BBC. And in that interview, he said a couple of things that doesn't paint the Kenyan athletics world in the greatest of lights, but he feared for the lives of his family during a campaign of online abuse that had wrongly linked him to the death of fellow Kenyan marathon runner Kelvin Kipton. And it's really, really sad because, you know, most of us were reading some of the insinuations or allegations and just thinking, my God, guys, get alive. Some social media users began to speculate that Kipchoge was part of a conspiracy to kill Kipton, based on the fact that he'd lowered the world record to 2 hours and 35 seconds. So Kipchoge said that he'd received a lot of bad things on social media, including that they'll burn down the training camp, burn his investments in town, burn his house down, burn the family, just horrible stuff. So his initial reaction when he saw the abuse and false rumors was to check whether his family was safe. He said, I don't have the power to go to police and tell them my life is in danger. So my concern was actually to tell my family to be extra conscious and cautious. So he said, I saw no meaning to change training venues because his life's so open anyway. Our sport is not training in the gym, it's going outside to run. He claims also he lost about 90% of his friends amid the wrongful link to Kipton's accident and online abuse. So, yeah, it's really, really sad, really painful for me to learn, even from my own people, my training mates, those who I have contact with, and the bad words that they're coming. So, you know, he believes that social media pressure and abuse affected him in Tokyo, where we know he came 10th on the 3rd of March, his lowest finish since his debut in 2013. When I was in Tokyo, I had 3 days and he did not sleep. It was his worst ever position and lead into a race. So I'm really, really sad to hear that, Tim, and I know that you'd probably have some pretty strong thoughts around this.
Oh, I do. I don't think there's any place in the world for online trolls and the abuse that people get on social media. But let alone that where it's now affecting things that are not on the racetrack anymore, it's now affecting family, it's affecting friendships. That's just horrible. And for something like that, which, you know, I don't know, no one really knows all the facts around what happened in that car accident, but to link it to Kipchoge just is such a massive, shot to try and take. It was a car accident. He was driving at night, coming home from training at altitude. He'd done a whole heap of training, had his coach there, and the likelihood is he's tried to swerve around a goat or a sheep or something in the middle of the road, or he's tried to fall asleep, or he's fallen asleep at the wheel or whatever, right? But no one will really ever know what happened. But it's sad that this is now affecting another athlete because, of what? I don't know really why you would accuse Kipchoge of it. Maybe I'm naive to what happens in Kenya, and maybe I don't understand the situation fully, but it just seems very, very silly and pointless what's been said. And to have that impact on him, I just only hope that he can move forward from here and get away from all that online abuse and be able to put in the hard yards to get to Tokyo and show us what he can actually do.
Yeah, 100%. And even when Kipton broke the world record, there was a massive rift in Kenyan athletes Kenyan athletics and their supporters, where so many people were just waiting for Kipchoge to hand the crown over and be gracious and to make social media posts and all that. And I'm pretty certain that he actually did congratulate Kipton, but it was almost like there was willful ignorance around that, just to prove a point that Kipchoge wasn't acknowledging the new champion. So, it's just petty stuff, and unfortunately it's come through to affect who will be the greatest marathoner of all time.
And it goes against everything that Kipchoge has said over the last sort of 10 years or more, around no human is limited. So it does mean that there's people that are out there that can do more than what he can do. And he's always talked about, peace and love and friendship and inclusiveness in running. He's always, when he's gone to new cities, he's always gone out there and been very open to meet the fans and to talk to the fans. And we've had Team Kerr on here before, where, Kipchoge specifically called out to go and meet with Aaron and Sandra and David before the London Marathon. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm naive to what happens in Kenyan running. I do see that there's a lot of things that happen over there that are good, and there's a lot of bad, and there's a lot of ugly, and there's a lot of other things that cheats and other things as well. But to put those links together on somebody's untimely passing is just wrong, let alone to then broadcast those meaningless things all over social media to have that impact on somebody.
Yeah. On a brighter note, Abbott have published some of their latest stats, and apart from the stat of Tony and Sharon being the first husband and wife to have run side by side, for the 6 majors, some of the stats really make for interesting reading. There's now 17,026 total number of 6-star finishes. And the reality is that since COVID, it's just exploded. So back in, just to give you an example, in 2020, there was 1 6-star finisher. 2021, there was 500. 2022, still feeling the way, it's 982. But in 2023, there were 4,574 6-star finishes. And so far in 2024, there have been 4,245. So realistically, you'll see by the end of the year that the number will be potentially well over 20,000 6-star finishes. So just including Alice. Yes. So 50 years and 7 months is the average age when a runner completes their journey. The average time is 4 hours and 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Right across the world, top 10 nations, United States have got 4,291. The UK have got 1,574. The most important country, of course, is Australia, and we have 445 current 6 stars. Number of athletes that have done it more than once is now sitting at 200. So maybe that's the stat that we've got to chase to be in that rarefied earth. Again, I don't know, but there's some people that have done it 3 times.
Yeah, so we actually know Mohammed, one of our friends. He's actually done it 3 times.
Yeah,
and he's actually on his round. I think he's going in for his 4th. So yeah.
So it's only 25 people have done 3 times. And there is one person in the world that has 6 6-star medals, believe it or not.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So runners completing all 6 majors in 1 year currently sits at 32 for 2023. So we're seeing that more and more now. And during the course of this year, let me see that I've got this right. London, there was 641. Boston, there was 1,037. Tokyo, there was 2,047. And there's no indication at this stage of how many we will see in the coming Berlin, Chicago, and New York races. So very interesting.
Exciting, isn't it? It's interesting how it's going and how quickly it's going. I remember it was only maybe at the end of last year there was only 11,000 or so finishes. So
yeah, it's just blowing up, isn't it?
Really adding up big time.
Really blowing up. So, and just on the final note of news, and for the first time, we talking about first times a lot recently, haven't we? But today was the first time we ranked in 4 different countries, Great Britain, Australia, Japan, and Sweden. So thank you. And it's the first time we've ranked in Japan. So totally blown away that there's people there listening to the Flying RuNR podcast. So we're first time in Japan. It's just cool. What can I say? Now, I've been to Japan. I've drunk the Flying Flying IPA, and maybe they've got it mistaken. So they've thought that maybe it's a product of the same beer company. I don't know. But thank you to all our Japanese listeners, and we say a very big arigato to you all. So
domo arigato gozaimasu.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll leave that with you.
All right. Thanks for the news this week, Tony. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about nutrition, which is what we're here to talk about. I'm going to kick this off as a bit of an open question segment tonight. So I want to hear from both of you about your thoughts around nutrition and what you guys do to ensure that you firstly get to the start line ready to go, but then secondly, being able to make it to the finish with energy to spare. So yes, Tara, I'm looking at you. So it's a bit of a heads up to our listeners. There's probably going to be a lot of toilet talk in the next little bit. How do I put this nicely? Probably talking around stomach issues as well. So it's all part of nutrition. It's what runners talk about. We're pretty open about toilet habits and stomach issues. So you might hear about that one. So we'll go from there. Now, first question, guys. In a general sense, when I use the term nutrition, what does it really mean to you guys? What does it mean?
I look at it as fueling my body. So nutrition to me is what does your body need to fuel itself for what you are upcoming for. So it's not necessarily a case of I like the look of that, I'm going to eat it. It's more of a case of what's actually going to be beneficial to make my body move in the way I need to.
Yeah, to me, I think nutrition for me is first part of the week. I try and eat like I'm a big unit. I've got to try and drop a little bit more weight to be more comfy on the running track, so on the road. So during the first part of the week, especially, nutrition to me means eating some protein and limiting the carbs. So. But yeah, exactly what Tara said. Nutrition is about fueling myself to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing so I can achieve what I want to achieve.
Yeah, so I agree. Nutrition is all of that. It can be a liquid or a solid form, I would imagine, as well. And it's also the stuff we need to have when we're actually out there running. So it's not always about what you're doing beforehand, but it's also what you're doing during the run as well, and what you're taking
And
in,
afterwards
and
as
then
well.
afterwards as well. So to me, I wrap the whole thing pre, during, and post nutrition and everything you eat or consume in that one big bucket of what we would call nutrition. So, all right. So when you're in a normal training period, a normal training block, what does a normal week of eating and fueling look like for you guys? What do you eat in the days and hours leading up to a long run? And what do you do in the moments before you start your run?
So I guess, look, what's a normal training block for us? Because we do stupid stuff.
Let's say a long run around 20 or more kilometers.
Okay, so that's pretty much every week for Tim and I. We try and hit around about the 20 to 21K. Well, I do personally. And that's just to keep that maintenance happening in the legs, to make sure that I can actually run a marathon when it comes in. I look at pretty much the same as Tony. First part of the week, I will always have, I'll eat quite healthily. So I eat like chicken salads and stuff for lunch. I always make sure I have a morning tea and an afternoon tea so that I've got that blood sugar at the right spot so that I'm not getting hungry and craving sugary foods and stuff like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So my little snacks can be something as simple as a protein muesli bar type thing, like a Carmen's muesli bar, a boiled egg, a Chobani yogurt or a high protein yogurt. There's so many things to choose from. Breakfast for me can be either, if I'm in a really big rush, usually a protein shake or something like that, or muesli, something simple. Dinner on a weeknight consists usually of some sort of protein, some form of carbs, and vegetables or salad. It gets mixed up every week and every night. When I get towards my longer runs, though, I do cut out the salads and the fibery stuff. And as Tim was saying, we're going to talk a lot about toileting issues. That creates toileting issues if I have too much fiber. So I cut out by Friday lunchtime. I sort of get rid of all of my fibery type stuff and just sort of stick to more rice and pastas basic and carbs and just very basic carbs. I try not to go for the refined stuff too much, but yeah. And then protein. I eat a lot of protein as well in that time.
Yeah, very similar. We do lots of salads and just things like spinach raw. Every morning I'll have eggs on like little thins, just to get some protein in and get the day started that way. And towards the end of the week, it is really just almost, I won't say open slather, but I don't necessarily mind having some additional carbs, maybe a pasta for lunch or some lasagna for lunch or dinner, and maybe a bit of pizza. So Thursday, Friday, it almost feels like, okay, loosen the reins and let's start building. Now, before a race, before a normal Saturday run, unless it's going to be a really long one, so anywhere up to about 15, I will still also enjoy a nice cold beer on a Friday night just to close off the week. But if it's over a 20K, I probably limit that to just the one. as opposed to, I know you guys are now shaking your head for all those audio listeners out there. Team Ellis are shaking their heads, but if it's only going to be a 4K, there might be 3 beers on a Friday night as opposed to one if I'm going to do a 20K. So, but yeah.
Now we're laughing because we see beers as good carbs as long as you hydrate with it and have a sufficient water. But that's another story. You've both mentioned protein a lot in your diets.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the protein? I know what it's for, but many of our listeners may not understand it.
So protein helps you build and retain muscle. So it also, if you're having a long run, what happens is, Tim has talked about this before, you have micro tears, your muscles actually start getting burnt into as you're running. So you're using your fat stores, but you're also actually using your muscle stores as well, unfortunately, as much as you don't want to. When you're using your muscle stores, what happens is it actually sucks away all your proteins. So you need to replenish those to ensure that the muscles repair and can get back to where they need to be in a quicker time frame. Complex carbs are very, very good as well, because you do need those as much as, like, I know there's a lot of people that are on keto and stuff like that. They have other ways of getting their complex carbs or the way that their body works. However, I do need those complex carbs, like what Tony was talking about. That helps the brain function as well. And it also helps with the food digestion and making sure that those nutrients that are needed are being absorbed the way that they need to. So with complex carbs, you're going to burn those prior to using up your muscle fats, your muscle stores. So if you've got complex carbs or carbohydrates in your system, you're going to actually be using those prior to using your protein out of your muscles. So that's why a carb load is important. Then after a run, you get those proteins back into you to ensure that any muscle mass that you have actually burnt into is being restored as soon as possible.
Yep. Fair answer. Yep. Fair answer. All right. So during a long run, do you have any routines or set fuels that you take to keep you going? And if you do, how frequently do you fuel your body and why?
Well, as you know, we do compass runs when we're on a long run. So I will, as I'm coming into where the car's parked, which is, predominantly it's a 5K loop and you're coming back to the car. I'm not a gel person. I don't like gels. They make me feel queasy. They don't actually make me sick. They just make me feel queasy. So I use blocks, and I use 2 styles of blocks. One is from Precision Fuels is the name of the company, and they're a lemon lime block. So 30 grams of carbs in 2 blocks. So I'll be chewing them as I come in and then get some water and wash it down. And there's a new one that I'm now using as well, and it's from Scratch Industries or Scratch Labs, I think maybe they're called, a US company, and they've got a really nice blueberry one. So very similar. I just chew on them as I'm coming in. So every 5Ks, and that then correlates back to what I look for on race day. So I try and get some nutrition in every 5Ks, and I find that seems to work for me. What about you, Tara?
So I always have, and I know I go on about bananas, but I always have a banana before I do a run, not necessarily a 5K run or something like that. Anything over about 10Ks, I'll have a banana probably half an hour before I run. Anything longer, I will actually eat half a Cliff bar, so the muesli bar type things, the oat bars, and sometimes even half a banana as well, depending on how I'm going, if what Tim wants to share with me. But then when I am actually running, my rule of thumb is always every 45 minutes. So it doesn't matter if I've done 5Ks in those 45 minutes, if I've done 8Ks or if I've done 7Ks. Every 45 minutes, I get that into my body. And now that is a reasoning because I've been out there for that amount of time. I know how much fuel my body needs to keep it sustained, and every 45 minutes is when I need to eat. I am like Tony. I'm very, very fussy on my gels. I will take a Morton gel. I won't take them with caffeine because the caffeine upsets my stomach. I did find a really good one when I was over in the States for Boston, and it's called UCAN, I think it's called. And it's actually a flavorless gel.
Wow.
And it's not really a gel, it's more like a paste, but it's really quite thin, and it's flavorless. So it's not sweet, which sometimes, you get sick and tired of having sweet stuff when you're running. So this one I find is really gentle on my stomach, no concerns. Cliff blocks, so the little jelly block things, and Fix Nutrition I find goes into my stomach quite well as well. So look, everyone's different. Everyone has their own thing. Tailwind I'm pretty good with as well. Everybody has Pure. Everyone has their own nutrition that works for them. But yeah, I've got to stay away from those really sticky, sweet gels. I'm with you, Tony.
100%. So, and I didn't mention before a long run or a race, and we'll often share a banana. I normally don't eat a great deal before I run, and one of those things is because, and wait for it, folks, this is where we're going to talk toilets. I'm a bit of a production line in the morning, and it's like bang, 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 bang. And so I try and limit that production run as much as I possibly can of a morning, or at least consolidate it. But we'll either have I'll have half a banana, or we also will share a Morton do a solid bar, a solid nutrition bar, and we'll often do that one as well. There's a flavor that's cocoa, so which we will share. But yeah, so yeah. That's before and during.
Yeah, so Tara, you're every 45 minutes. Tony, you're around that every 35 to 40 minutes on your run.
Every 5K, it just works out. Yeah,
and I'm presuming both of you are taking it before you feel you're running low on energy. You're taking it before that energy low, so that you've got a more stable, consistent sort of energy load. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. It's just I know 5K is about the limit, and sometimes during a race that 5K is around that 40 to 45 mark. So I just know that that's my limit. During a race we'll also have little red jelly beans with us, and maybe a couple of caffeine mints that we brought back from Holland. That'll pick us up and perk us up, but they're like incidentals, that they're like a little bit of a treat as you're going around. But the main fueling is done through those blocks that I talked about.
Yeah, it is really important. If you feel that you're getting low on energy, you've gone too far without fueling, and you're into sort of that danger zone at that point where it gets very hard to bring it back above the line, I guess, and you're starting to run, past the halfway line in the fuel tank, and you're starting to head towards empty. So
yeah, it's a bit like with hydration as well. If you're starting to feel thirsty, it's probably too late. You don't want to be getting to that point.
So once you've done your training run, and I'm only still talking training at the moment, is there anything special you consume? And if there is, how quickly would you consume that item post just your training run? And is there any special reason why you do it that way?
Well,
you go, Tara.
Sorry. I will always have what's called a zero tablet in my water bottle. And a zero tablet is just electrolytes and rehydration of all those things that you've lost. And it also then replenishes the fluid back into my body. You can take like Gatorade or any of those sort of things, I guess. I do try to get protein in, though, as soon as I possibly can. So, and as I said before, that is mainly to rebuild those muscles, to help repair them. And also it helps with the DOMs and the fatigue that you may get the next day. So as well as stretching, eating is really, really important after a run. It's going to, especially those long runs, it really does help with the recovery. You can have eggs, you can have whatever form of protein you want, but it's really quite important. A chocolate thick shake is always a good one, as we've mentioned a few times before as well. Yeah.
So where do I start here? My God, we enjoy eating after a run. So yeah, but generally during a training block, we'll pop down. We'll get a protein shake, one of the pre-bought ones. We will get some iced coffee, even though Sharon now does a wicked iced coffee with protein. So we're sort of killing two birds with one stone. We'll do things like fruit toast for breakfast just because it's a bit of a treat. But if it's later on in the day and it's not necessarily part of our breakfast scenario, there's nothing better sometimes than the old McDonald's chocolate thick shake. For us, and also, just another little thing that seems to work is the old red ambulance. Getting a nice cold Coke into you just seems to work magic, and I'm still not sure what it is, whether it's the sugars or there's something in that just runners crave. But yeah, there's so many little special things that we can tend to just treat ourselves, but also look after ourselves. So,
yeah. It's the reason why Tara and I run is so we can eat and drink whatever we want.
I must admit, there's nothing better than after a race is getting those oranges. It feels a bit like the sporting days. When the mum would cut the oranges up and you'd have it at halftime. Oranges at the end of a race is really, really, there's nothing nicer than a cold orange at the end of a race.
You know what was better? When the Gold Coast Marathon, probably 5 years ago now, used to have kiwi fruit cut up at the end, gold kiwi fruit. So those are the specials, every gold kiwi fruit ones. And no oranges. You just hoe into the golden kiwi fruit, and it was perfect after a marathon.
Maybe it's the vitamin C in them.
Yeah, I think it's the vitamin C and the sweetness. But yeah, I'm plugging the Gold Coast. If you can get more kiwi fruit, I'll be more than happy. All right. So before we start talking about carbo load, I'm now switching it to race week and to a race of a marathon or thereabouts. In the days and weeks leading up to the race, is there anything different that you would do with your nutrition and what you eat, what you drink?
I personally don't change too much up before a marathon. Look, I'm pretty good at drinking a couple of beers the night before, so good carbo loading. In all honesty, I just add one extra piece of carbs into my food. I don't actually put a lot of extra carbs in there. Carbo loading.
No, we'll talk carbo loading next.
Oh, okay.
This is what else you might do.
So yeah, I just add a little bit of food just to make sure I've got enough nutrition to get through the day. Yeah, nothing else.
Yeah, I don't change too much, to be honest. The week of a race, I probably don't think about it as much. So. But yeah, might have a bit more chocolate or something, knowing full well that that all that's going to come in handy. But yeah, I don't normally change too much. I just probably spend less time stressing about what I'm eating. So
yeah, I think for me, I try to cut out some of the unhealthier type stuff, the little snacks that I might have along the way that, the chocolates I might cut out, or it might be the bowl of ice cream once a week that I might have after dinner, or it might be the morning teas at work. I might just cut some of those sort of things out, that, the cakes and the lollies and the chips and dips and those sort of things that are provided occasionally for work, morning teas, whatever, right? I try to eat maybe a little bit more cleaner in that week leading into it. But again, not much different. As Tara said, maybe add a little bit extra carb in the 3 or 4 days leading in, and that's not a huge amount, and we'll talk about that in the next question. But just more about trying to be cleaner and getting some of that shit, I guess, that's in your body out, and having a clean system for when you are running.
Well, someone's got to do it. I'm probably putting more shit into my system, so that particular week. So that's interesting, isn't it? So
it's more. I think I'm generally like Tara. I eat the same sort of foods as Tara most of the week: salads and proteins and healthy eating. But I do sneak in chocolate bars and lollies and dips and stuff every once in a while, and ice cream, and so I cut that out. I guess is all that extra little stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're talking carbo load. Everyone's heard the term carbo load. It's basically banking carbohydrates before your body goes into a big race, an event where it's going to consume a lot of carbohydrates. It's about building it up beforehand. For both of you guys, what does a carbo load look like? And how many days would you typically start the carbo load before you do a race? And is it always pasta? Do you always have to eat pasta?
No. I once again, it's something I don't necessarily think too much about. When I initially started running, I was, and once again, I'm one of these people that don't want to go to bed with a full tummy, because it disrupts my sleep a lot. So my dinners are normally the lightest meal of the lot. But coming into, the 2 days before, lasagna is one of my favorites. I love a bit of lasagna, a nice big slab of lasagna. Pizzas, it's not always pasta. Doing a Thai meal or a noodle meal with rice is always something that adds a little bit of spiciness to it. So, I don't really I don't like carb load like people have an image of carb load, a big bowl of spaghetti and away they go. I don't eat a great deal more, I guess. It's just focused more on the carb area, I guess, as opposed to what I normally would. So
I guess, we don't do what's a traditional carbo load either. There has been studies being put out there that your body can only store and consume what it needs for that amount of time. The rest of it is a waste product. And as you were saying earlier, Tony, you've got the production line in the morning. You know what's going to happen if you overeat and you over carbo load. You're either going to get blocked up or you're going to keep going. So that's not what anybody wants. Tim and I actually really enjoy sushi the day before a race. So we'll go to a sushi train and instead of having 4 plates of sushi, like off the train, we might have 5, 6, 7. Well, Tim 8, does, 9. But I don't eat a lot the night before a race either. I'm like you, Tony. I just stay away from the high fiber foods. I will have things like sushi, pizza, pasta. I try not to eat fatty foods, chocolate, dairy, anything that's going to upset my stomach the next day. I just keep it plain and simple. Rice. I definitely couldn't do Thai, so I take my hat off to you for that one, because that spiciness definitely isn't going to agree the next day. But everybody's different and can do things differently, obviously. But I really don't. If you look at the studies that have been done for carbo loading, it's having 3 days of carbo loading before a run is really not necessary.
Yeah, I think I've said it before. We've seen a sports dietitian before, nutritionist.
Dietitian.
And the way she explained carbo loading for us is it's only 1 or 2 extra bits of carbohydrate during the day. So she calls them bakery days, and about 3 days beforehand, we would start where you'd get an extra. You go to the bakery and you might get an extra bread roll, or you might get an extra savory treat, or like a little quiche or something like that, and just add it in there. It's not about stuffing yourself to your full, but it's just about adding a little bit of extra carbohydrate each day for 3 or 4 days beforehand. And we find that works pretty well We don't always do that, but it might be, an extra slice of bread or an extra couple of pieces of bread on the weekend, or an extra piece of toast, or having toast in the morning rather than a protein shake or something like that. So those sort of things we find help us. And I guess everyone's different with their carbo loads. It's definitely something you need to work on and understand and work out what works for you and your gut, because everyone is different. And I know people that sit there and they'll consume bowl after bowl after bowl after bowl of pasta, and they'll get up and run all right. And I know other people like you guys who don't do that. So,
and Tim has an iron gut and can have anything he wants and still run and do an amazing job, whereas I have to be extremely careful. So it is one of those things that everybody has to work out for themselves, because everybody has a different digestive system and a tolerance. And as you get older, you don't tolerate things quite the same way as you did when you were younger either. So
yeah, and if you listen to a lot of the runners from the US or Great Britain, for example, they'll swear by adding a bagel in the day of a race or the night before. So that sort of backs up that whole bakery day scenario. So bagels are a really good source of carbs. So.
Yeah. Heavy, dense items are good to eat. They're good carbs. How do you guys find it when you're traveling, I guess, to do your carb loads and to do it in different countries? Have you had any problems or any difficulty finding carbohydrates, or when you're staying in hotels to find meals that are going to suit your guts to be able to run properly the next day or a week later?
No, I think that all comes back to planning as well, doesn't it? So I know a lot of people will travel to like Berlin was probably the most challenging one for us, but we still found a really good local pizza place where we could grab pizza. And of course, with Traveling Fit, we always have the carb dinner the night before. But a lot of people don't plan ahead and don't book in for their restaurants and whatever. And then suddenly you're walking around saying, where am I going to eat? Because everywhere's full. So I think London, when we did London in 2022, that was a very similar experience. There was 2 nights before, there was, a lot of us that were just saying, well, geez, where are we going to eat? So you've got to plan that, I guess, don't you? You've just got to say, okay, what's around me, book it in if need be. We ended up at one of those restaurants run by one of those famous chefs. It's not Gordon Ramsay. It might have been Gordon Ramsay, one of these restaurants.
He's everywhere. We've just come back from Vegas. Every casino's got a Gordon Ramsay restaurant.
Yeah. So, you've just got to be organized, and you've just got to be aware of what it is that works for you. So,
yeah, I do know in Tokyo, we actually found a Italian place, and we had pre-booked it probably 3 months prior. And that was done on purpose because we knew Tokyo Marathon was going to be a busy weekend. And we were actually only allocated a 45-minute slot because it was so busy on that weekend in that place. So it's lucky we did book. There is, obviously, if you've got a stomach like Tim and you can eat whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But if you are very fastidious on what you want to eat, pre-plan what you're going to eat before you do anything. I know with Gold Coast weekend, Tim and I actually pre-cook all of our food that I want to have down there and bring it down with me in the car because we have a self-contained unit every year. So I actually plan out my meals and cook it to the point so that when I'm in the apartment, I know I've got everything I need.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is when you're traveling overseas, go into the supermarkets. Might not be able to speak the language, but you can see the products, you can see what you're buying. And that's another thing we do is we go into the local supermarkets and buy bread rolls, or we buy
bagels or
bananas and, a bit of ham and cheese or whatever and throw it in there. And that could be something as well that we've used before to fuel. All right. I presume on race day, there's nothing new on race day for you guys. It's the same as what you do on training days. Every 40 to 45 minutes, you're fueling during the race. Yep. I guess what's the deal with water? Do you link your fueling strategies around where the drink stations are going to be?
Yeah, usually, yeah. I mean, and I think that's one of the key things of where this 5K just seems to work for me, because you've normally got, like most of the majors, within the first 2 miles is your first like drink station, and then there's usually another one in between. So I'll go through the first drink station, just get some water or some Gatorade or whatever they've got, and then take my nutrition before. Sorry, Tara.
Let's take Gatorade around Tara.
Yeah. But then have my nutrition as I'm coming into the second one. So I might hold off a little bit longer sometimes, but usually the drink stations end up somewhere around that 5K mark or close enough to that it's not causing too much distress.
Yeah, I'm the same. I always have a look at the course map beforehand. Go, right, there's going to be a water station here, so I'll take my nutrition like
half a kilometre
before then, so I've got time to digest it. Then I've got watered down with it. Same as with clothing, don't try anything new on race day. Look, after 15 marathons, you'd think I'd know better. Stupidly, I did that in Gold Coast. I've done it in Gold Coast. I've done it in Boston.
Uluru.
I've done it in Uluru. I've done it in a few marathons where I've actually taken hydration products or food on course that I haven't trained with, and it's come back to bite me in the back end really badly. So if you do have a really sensitive stomach, don't take this stuff on course. Go and try it beforehand and use it on your training runs. That's what your training runs are for. I did look for the Gatorade that they had on course at Boston to train with, and they didn't have it anywhere in Australia. I didn't realise that it was actually different to normal Gatorade, and it's quite different. So don't just assume that the name is going to be the same either.
Gatorade Endurance, I think it was, as opposed to Gatorade. So
it's
a bit different. But anyway, live and learn.
Yep.
The good old haterade.
But yeah, if you're on course, take your nutrition if you don't know what you're going to be having on course. And if you don't have the choice to be able to take your own nutrition, like I know Tokyo, you cannot take your own water or hydration on course because they don't want you carrying your own water packs, and that's their rules. That's fine. Try and find what they have on course and actually train with it, because you're not going to have the option to be able to take your own stuff on course. And also, don't rely on the fuel stations on course to always have the fuel. So make sure you carry your own stuff on course as well. That's just my own personal thing, because you're not going to be able to get every 45 minutes or hour or however often you want to do it. They might not have it on that table because everyone else has already taken it. So
especially if you're a back of the packer, quite often the gels are all gone by the time you're coming through. So, and that's why for a lot of runners, gels are so convenient. They're quite a simple little pack just to be able to put into your pocket or around the belt or what have you. So, the other interesting thing on race day is that often you'll see a whole range of products being offered as you go through as well. So I know in Tokyo and Berlin, there were things on tables that were being offered at nutrition and you're going, geez, I wouldn't mind trying that. But you don't. So you don't, unless you know for certain what it is. And even then, so things like bananas, people will be taking bananas. People will offer you stuff on course, whether it's a lolly or something else. Be cautious with that. You don't want to be a bad guest in people's country. And, I can say that I took some pretzels when we did New York, and they were the best bloody thing I've ever had, because it was exactly what I needed at the 21-mile mark coming through Harlem. So, but sometimes you may not get so lucky, and it's a little bit of pot luck. If someone actually did want to do some harm, how easy would it be? So just be cautious with that sort of stuff, but even be cautious with the official stuff that's on the tables, especially if it's something that looks like you would not eat in Australia. Don't.
touch.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm mindful of time, just looking at the clock as well. So I'll ask the last question. What is your best tip for our listeners when it comes to nutrition, Tara?
I think do what you want to do on your training run. Get out, iron out all those kinks on your training run. And if you're going to try new things and you have got an upset stomach on your training run, plan your training runs around toilet stops, because there's lots and lots of places like around the riverfronts or beach fronts or parks or something like that. Have a look at where the toilets are if you are trying out new stuff and you do get a sensitive stomach. But yeah, iron out the kinks on your training runs. That's what they're there for. You can always pull up at 12 Ks and have to run home if you need to and just miss that training run, rather than doing that on the actual marathon day or race day or whatever you're doing, half marathon, 10 Ks, whatever you're doing. Don't ruin your race day by doing something stupid and taking nutrition then.
Yeah. And mine's got to equate back to training as well. Training is not just for your legs and your body. It's on how you're going to fuel, how you're going to transition, what sort of a timing do you get at for us, our compass runs, so we always focus around that, understand what's on course at whatever race you're going to be and train with that and train to those conditions. And as Tara says, in our case, we're only ever 2.5K, worst case scenario, walk back to the car if we need to. So that's one of the benefits of doing the compass runs, as we call it. So, but train and then don't deviate on race day.
We're very fortunate here in Australia. We have free public toilets. I couldn't imagine Tara in a lot of European countries or in the US having to pay. Well, she's trying to run to get into the toilet, trying to work out how she's going to pay for the toilet half the time. So
you'd be jumping turnstiles, wouldn't you?
But anyway.
I think I'd just do lots and lots of treadmill running. Yes. Thanks, guys. Well, we hope that this has helped you guys out and our listeners have actually got some knowledge from our mistakes that we've made and the things that we've learned along the way. We are not nutritionalists. We're not dietitians. We're just telling you what we know from our own personal experiences of many years of running and many, many years of doing the wrong things and the right things that work for us. But it is one of those things that you need to work out for yourself. But before we wrap things up, we're going to go for Tim's tip for the week rather than his joke, which was really terrible at the start of the week, start of the show.
Thanks, Tara. So I'm going to give you my tip now on nutrition. So it's a nutrition-based tip, and it's one that's definitely helped Tara and I. I've talked about it a little bit earlier on. But if you have the time and or financial capability, I highly recommend spending some time with a sports dietitian or nutritionalist and getting someone who can provide you with a meal plan based on science, and that can make a massive difference. And we know we made a massive difference. Seeing somebody who knows and understands how much your body consumes when running and how your body is impacted by fuel and energy and all the rest of it really does help. And we found when we went and saw a sports dietitian, we got some really good tips and plans, some good meals that we could cook for ourselves. And it made us, or helped us ensure that we were properly fueled pre, during and post our training runs. And by doing that, it reduced fatigue. And I think since we've done that, we've largely been, touch wood, injury-free for most of what we've done because we're eating the right foods, we're staying healthy, and we're fueling our bodies at the same time. So eating the right foods, getting the right advice, and doing the right thing can reduce fatigue and injury. And when racing, I guess the other tip for me is write the times when you need to fuel. So Tara's talked about every 45 minutes. Tony, it's every 5Ks. Write them on your hand where you're planning to fuel, because it is very easy when you're running. Your brain's not focused on time. It's not necessarily focused on where you're at in the race. So make sure you write your times down on your hand just as a memory check to go, okay, I need to fuel now at 45 minutes, 1 hour 30, 2 hours 15, 3 hours 45. etc., etc. And it makes it so much easier. So that's my tip this week. So Tony, what's coming up on next week's episode?
And just before I do, just to add to Tim's tip, you can set your alert on your Garmin as well. You can set your alarm, an alert to go off every 45 minutes or so, and it's going to buzz away on your wrist, and that's a reminder for you to take your nutrition. So, just to add that. Yep. So next week, what's happening next week's episode? Well, it could be one or two things again. So we've got a special guest that we are looking forward to speaking to. She's from the US and she's going through some pretty serious medical stuff at the moment. So we're just giving her a little bit of space and just waiting for her to reach back out to us. She's keen to come on, but going through some challenges at the minute. So we don't want to add to those challenges by saying, hey, come on, come. So if we don't have the special guest, we're probably going to be talking about something else about running. And I think looking ahead and looking into my crystal ball, we're going to talk about stepping it up, which sounds like one of those movies where, the dancers, we're going to step it up. So all three of us are running our next marathon separately to our partners. And this is going to be a first for me because Sharon and I have always run together, but for the Gold Coast, we're running separately. I've got a bit of a quest to see what I can get done, how I can go personally. And I know for Sharon, Gold Coast is a bit of a time on legs process for what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So she's not overly focused on any sort of milestones. And I know that Tim and Tara tend to run the Gold Coast separately most years anyway. So, and they're now, okay. For those watching on video, you'll see what they're doing. And if you're listening on audio, check out the video because they've been pretty cluey tonight, those two. So, but yeah, so it's going to be interesting. We're even training together, separately, as you heard from Tara earlier. So we'll share our experiences next week on how that's all going if we don't indeed have our special guest. And at that stage, I think we'll be about 6 weeks out from the Gold Coast Marathon. So either way, it's going to be great because that's what we aim to do, just have some fun, talk about running and produce really good episodes for the Flying RuNR.
Thanks, Tony. Yes, and Tara and I are mucking around. Haven't seen each other all day. And just like that, our 46th episode has concluded. Now, before I do the sign-off for the end, just like to do a massive shout out to our friend Angela, who we bumped into yesterday. I was out running yesterday doing my long run, and in the darkness of the early morning, she's running in the opposite direction, pulls over, has a chat to me and goes, guess what? I'm listening to you right now on the podcast as I'm running and I've just bumped into you. So that's pretty cool. I hadn't ever had that before, somebody listening to me and running into each other. So hello, Angela, and thank you for listening.
And Angela, thank you for all the interaction on social media as well. It's very much appreciated.
We'll actually look to try and see if we can get Angela on the show at some stage because she has a very different story around running as well. She organises events and running races, so we'll probably look to get her on and her business partner as well. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this show, please like and subscribe wherever you listened or watched this episode, and maybe even write a comment and share your experiences around nutrition with our listeners. We always love a good poo or a stomach issue story, so maybe write something in there about your worst scenario. Video of this episode will be available at Spotify and on YouTube, and audio on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and most other popular podcast platforms. Remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Flying RuNR. Until then, happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.